إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أحييكم بتات الإسلام وهي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So last week we discussed about the Hadith Shadh. We already discussed the definition of Hadith Shadh and the types of Hadith Shadh. We explained to you that we have two types of Hadith Shadh. We have Shadh fil Isnad and Shadh fil Matan. So today inshallah we try to discuss about the Hadith al-Munkar. Hadith al-Munkar. Hadith al-Munkar. So, inshallah, we discuss today the definition of Hadith al-Munkar. Also, the examples of Hadith al-Munkar and what is the relationship between Hadith al-Munkar and Hadith al-Shadh. Relationship between Hadith al-Munkar and Hadith al-Shadh, and what is the differences between Hadith al-Munkar and Hadith al-Shadh. So Hadith al-Munkar, if we said Munkar lugatan, if we say Hadith al-Munkar lugatan huwa ismul maf'ul min al-inkar. The Munkar in Arabic language is ismu maf'ul min kalimatil inkar, means the origin word is al-inkar. What is the meaning inkar? Disagree. Yes, to disagree with something. This is called al-inkar. Is the opposite of al-ikrar, agree. Ikrar means to agree in something. So inkar is the opposite of al-ikrar. Ikrar, now, to agree. So inkar is the opposite of ikrar. Disagree is the opposite of agree. So this is the meaning of munkar. Also another meaning of munkar in Arabic language is adam al-ma'arifa. Adam al-ma'arifa means if you didn't know anything. Maybe I asked you something, did you know it? You said no, I didn't know. So this also is the meaning of munkar. Adam al-ma'arifa, if you didn't know something.
Different from jahil.
Yes, it's not jahil. You can ask me now something, I said I didn't know it. So this not show that I am jahil. So in Arabic also the meaning of munkar also adam al-ma'arifa, if you didn't know something, is the opposite of ma'arifa. Didd al-ma'arifa is the opposite of na'am, knowledge, ma'arifa. Okay, so this is the two types, this is the two meaning of munkar in Arabic language. One, disagree, opposite of agree. Second, if you didn't know something, opposite of ma'arifa. So this is the meaning of munkar in Arabic language. So what is the meaning of munkar in hadith terminology, in mustalah al-hadith? If we said munkar, so the ulama, they have different opinions regarding the definition of hadith al-munkar. The ulama has different opinions regarding the definition of hadith al-munkar. So, but the two opinions of ulama or the two definition is better than the rest definition. Means all this definition that the ulama mentioning regarding the hadith al-munkar, the better definition is two. One, هو الحديث الذي في إسناده راو فخش غلطه أو كسرت غفلته أو ظهر فسقه. The first definition is the hadith which inside the isnad of this hadith we have the narrator who has serious mistakes, أو كسرت غفلته, or he cannot distinguish between error and good, or he cannot distinguish between truth and false. So أو ظهر فسقه, or this rawi is a fasik. So if you find any narrator in the isnad, this narrator, he committed the serious mistakes in the hadith, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or he's a fasik, so we call this hadith munkar. I repeat again. We said hadith al-munkar, the ulama has different opinion regarding the definition of hadith al-munkar. But I said the two definition regarding these different opinions, the two definition is better than the rest. The first definition is هو الحديث الذي في إسناده راو فخش غلطه أو كثرت غفلته أو ظهر فسقه. Mean is the hadith that we get in the isnad of that hadith a narrator who has serious mistakes in the hadith, or kasurat ghaflatuhu, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or between truth and false from the hadith. Aw zahara fiskahu, or he's a fasik. So if you find any hadith in the isnad, you find the rawi, he has serious mistakes, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or he's a fasik, so this hadith is called munkar. Okay, this is the first definition. The second definition is هو ما رواه الضعيف مخالفا لما رواه الثقة. ما رواه الضعيف مخالفا لما رواه الثقة means is the hadith that the narrator who narrated this hadith is weak, and this narrator who is weak, he narrated the hadith that is against with the hadith that another narrator who narrated is sikha. You understand? I repeat again. ما رواه الضعيف مخالفا لما رواه الثقة. We said in the hadith al-shadh, we said that if the narrator who is sikha narrated the hadith against the another narrator who is better than him in terms of sikha, or he against majority of the narrator that are sikha, this is called shadh. So munkar means is the hadith that narrator narrated it. This narrator is weak, is da'if, and after he narrated this hadith, he against another narrator who is sikha. You understand? Yes, the same hadith. the narrator is da'if. He narrated the hadith that is against with another narrator who is siqah, but it's the same hadith. So this is called munkar. This is called munkar. Means riwayatul da'if mukhalifa lima rawahu al-thiqa. If the rawi is da'if, a weak, narrated the hadith that is contradicting with the hadith that the thiqa narrated. So this is called munkar. So this is the difference between munkar and shadh. The shadh, the narrator who narrated it is thiqa, but is contradicting with the narrator who is better than him in terms of memorization, or he contradicting with the majority of the thiqat. This is called shadh. But munkar, the narrator is not thiqa, is da'if, and he narrated the hadith that is contradicting with another narrator who is thiqa. So this is the two definition of hadithul munkar. This is the two definition of hadithul munkar. So the first definition, we said that if you find in the isnad of hadith a rawi who has serious mistakes, or the rawi who cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or the rawi who is fasik, so this hadith is called munkar. The second definition means the narrator who is weak. He narrated the hadith that is contradicting with the another narrator who is thiqa. So this also called munkar. So we try to give the examples for each definition, because I give you only two definitions. This two definition is better than the rest definition of what ulama said. So we started with the first definition and the example. The first definition, we said that the hadith that we find in the isnad, the narrator who has serious mistakes, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or he's a fasik. So the example of this definition is hadith ma rawahu an-Nasa'i wa ibn Majah min riwayati Abi Zukair Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais an Hisham bin Urwa an abihi an Aisha radiyallahu anha قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلوا بلح بالتمر فإن ابن آدم إذا أكله غضب الشيطان. So this hadith, Imam al-Nasa'i and Ibn Majah narrated it from Abi Zukair. Abu Zukair, his name is Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais. Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais Abu Zukair. So he narrated it an Hisham bin Urwa, an Hisham bin Urwa, an Hisham bin Urwa. And Hisham bin Urwa, he narrated it from his father. His father is Urwa bin Zubair, the son of Zubair bin Awwam, the son of Asma binti Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha. So Urwa bin Zubair, he narrated from Aisha as-Siddiqa al-Mu'minin radiyallahu anha. قالت Aisha, she said that قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Kulu balah bitamr. Al-balah is the type of tamr. I didn't know what you said in Malay. I didn't know the name of balah. Is there another types in tamr? You know, because we have different types of tamr. So this balah is another type of tamr. Yes. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that.
Is the young one?
Yes, like is the.
Not right.
Yes, not complete. Yeah, red or not, it's like rutab, but it's not pure rutab.
Type of
In I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know the name of it in English. Balah.
In the bucket.
Yes, that you take it from the butter. That this is called balah. So for inna ibn Adama, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that you try to eat this balah. Yeah. Yes. But for inna ibn Adama, because if a human being if a human being eat this balah, gadaba shaitan, he will be angry. Yes, if you want to make a shaitan not happy, try to eat a balah.
This is munkar.
But the hadith is munkar. The hadith is munkar, because even you eat the balah, this cannot make shaitan upset. The thing that make shaitan upset, he see you always, you read the Quran, you pray in jama'ah, you didn't do something that is haram, so you can make shaitan upset. So this is the hadith. Qala an-Nasa'i, then Imam an-Nasa'i, after he narrated this hadith, he said haza hadithun munkar. He said this hadith is munkar. Why? Because Abu Zukair, he is the Sheikh Saleh, means he's the righteous man. We don't have any problem with him. He's the righteous man, but he cannot distinguish between wrong and right, because maybe he have a lot of problem with his memorization. Gafla, indahu gafla, the person who cannot differentiate between good and wrong in the hadith. If you inform him, he cannot distinguish, is it this from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or is this is from Sahaba. He cannot distinguish. So this Abu Zukair, he have shiddatul gafla. He cannot distinguish between the right and wrong. He cannot distinguish between the hadith that come from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the hadith that come from Sahaba and the hadith that come from Tabi'in. He cannot distinguish. So for this reason, this hadith is munkar. This hadith is munkar. But his personality, he's a good man. He's a good man. He's a righteous man. He's not a passing. He's a righteous man. But his problem is he cannot distinguish between the saying of the Prophet and the saying of the Sahaba and the saying of the Tabi'in. So for this reason, Imam Nasa'i said this hadith is munkar, because in the isnad we have the one rawi, his name is Abu Zukair Muhammad Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais. This one, he cannot distinguish between the saying of the Prophet and the saying of Sahaba and the saying of Tabi'in. So for this reason, the ulama rejected his hadith. For this reason, the ulama rejected his hadith. So this is the example of the first definition. If you look this example, we find in the isnad the narrator who cannot distinguish between right and wrong. So for this reason, the ulama, Imam Nasa'i said this hadith is munkar, is rejected.
Is the right and wrong referred to the saying of?
Yes, he cannot distinguish between the saying of the Prophet and the
halal and haram.
no, I don't mean halal and haram. Means what came from Prophet and what came from Sahaba and what came from Tabi'in. Maybe maybe the hadith is come from Tabi'in, he refer it to the Prophet, you see, or maybe it's from, or maybe from Sahaba, he said from Prophet, because he had the gafla, he cannot distinguish.
Gafla.
Yeah, gafla.
Just now we said the hadith was narrated by Imam Nasa'i and
Ibn Majah. Yes, Ibn Majah and Imam Nasa'i, both of them narrated this hadith from their books.
Then Abu Zukair.
Eh?
Then Abu
They narrated it from the way of Abu Zukair. Because Imam Nasa'i and Ibn Majah, they are the authors of the book. Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Sunan Ibn Majah and Sunan Nasa'i. So both of them narrated this hadith from the way of Abu Zukair, Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais. This Yahya narrated this hadith from Hisham bin Urwa, and Hisham bin Urwa narrated it from his father Urwa bin Zubair, and his father he narrated it from Ummuna Aisha as-Siddiqa bint Siddiq radiyallahu anha.
Abu Zukair and Yahya is one name?
Yes, Abu Zukair is kunya. Like now we call you Ummu Maryam. So this is his kunya.
So his name is
Yahya. His name is Yahya. Yahya.
Zukair is Yahya bin Muhammad.
Yes, Zukair is Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais. Like my kunya is Abu Abdullah.
The second one.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, no, the third one. Yeah, third one.
So you choose the son.
Yes, I choose the son. Before I got Abdullah, I already named my. Before I get married, I name myself kunya. I give my name. I give kunya to me Abu Abdullah. Since I am student at Sudan, Abu Abdullah.
So when you got a son, only you change.
Yeah, I didn't change.
Then you have two kunya.
Yes, only one.
Abu Abdullah and
His son is Abdullah.
It's Abdullah also. It's Abdullah
You
also.
feel that?
Yes. Are you Abu Abdurrahman? Yes, it's good. Because
Yes.
Abu Abdullah, this kunya is for Muhaddisun. If you look the names, many kunya of the ulama al-Hadith, Abu Abdullah. For example, Imam al-Bukhari, Abu Abdullah. Muhammad bin Ismail, Bukhari. Also Imam Ahmad, Abu Abdullah. Also Imam Shafi'i, Abu Abdullah. Also Ali ibn Madini, Abu Abdullah. This kunya is for Muhaddisi. Yes.
Abdullah
So-
is the same as Abdullah.
Eh?
Abdullah is the same as Abdullah.
Abu Abdullah. This is kunya. The name is Abdullah. Yeah. So this is the kunya.
It's the kunya for Ahlul Fuqaha.
Even also fuqaha like Shafi is faqih, also Imam Malik, also Abu Abdullah.
Imam Malik is
Yes, Abu Abdullah, also Imam Malik, Abu Abdullah. No, okay. Then the second example of second definition. For second definition means the rawi. Second definition is ma rawahu ad-da'if mukhalifan lima rawahu al-thiqa. Means if the narrator who is weak, he narrated the hadith, is against the narrator who is thiqa, the same hadith. So the misal of this hadith is ma rawahu ibn Abi Hatim. Ma rawahu ibn Abi Hatim min tariq Hubayb bin Habib az-Zayyat an Abi Ishaq anil Aizara bin Hurayth an Ibn Abbas عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة وحج البيت وصام وقرأ الضيف دخل الجنة. So this hadith, Ibn Abi Hatim narrated it in Kitabuhu al-Ilal. Ibn Abi Hatim, Abdurrahman bin Abi Hatim. Abdurrahman bin Abi Hatim narrated this hadith from the way of Hubayb bin Habib Hubayb bin Habib. Habib. Hubayb bin Habib. Hubayb bin Habib narrated it from Ishaq. From Ishaq. Then Ishaq narrated this hadith from Aizara bin Hurais. Aizara bin Aizara Ainu. Aizara ya za Aizara bin Hurais. Aizara bin Hurais. Then Aizara bin Hurais narrated this hadith from Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever performed the 5 daily prayers and he gave the zakah and he visited Kaaba, means he performed the Hajj, and he do fasting, means some Ramadan, and he respect his guest, Dave. He respect his guest. Dakhala Jannah, he will enter Jannah. He will enter Jannah. Whoever perform 5 daily prayers, and also he give the zakah. Wa alaikum salam. Sheikh Ahmad ta'akhart. Okay. Whoever perform the 5 daily prayers and he give the zakah and he perform the Hajj and fasting and he respect his guest, so he will enter Jannah. He will enter Jannah. So this hadith is munkar. This hadith is munkar. This hadith is munkar. Why? Abu Hatim, Abu Hatim, he said that huwa munkar. This hadith is munkar. Why this hadith is munkar? Why this hadith is munkar? Because
Abu Hatim is a father of Muhammad.
yes, Abu Hatim. He said yes.
Whoever performed the 5 daily prayers.
Yes, okay, whoever, the hadith is whoever performed the 5 daily prayers.
And also give zakah.
Yes, and perform the Hajj and fasting, and he respect his guest, so he will enter Jannah. He will enter Jannah. Okay, so but this hadith is munkar because Hubayb bin Habib, who narrated this hadith from Ishaq. So this Hubayb is weak. This Hubayb is weak. And also he against many students of Ishaq. Many students of Ishaq narrated this hadith from Ibn Abbas mawqufan. Means is the saying of Ibn Abbas. It's not the saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only Hubayb bin Habib narrated this hadith from Ishaq and Aizara and Ibn Abbas and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this Hubayb bin Habib is weak, and he's the only one narrated this hadith marfu'an ila Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the rest, the majority of the students of Ishaq narrated this hadith mawqufan ala Ibn Abbas. Mawqufan ala Ibn Abbas means this hadith is not the saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the saying of Abdullah bin Abbas. So for this reason, Abu Hatim said this hadith is munkar. This hadith is munkar. So you see, this second definition said that if the weak narrator narrated the hadith against the another narrator who is siqah, So you see, this Hubayb bin Habib is weak, and the hadith that he narrated is against the majority of the students of Ishaq. The majority of the students of Ishaq narrated this hadith from Ishaq and Aizara bin Hurais and Ibn Abbas mawqufan, from Ibn Abbas only, not directly to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's against majority of the student of Ishaq. Only him, he narrated this hadith from Ishaq and Aizara and Ibn Abbas and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he's a weak. So this is the second example of this second definition. So what is the difference between
from Nabi is
marfu? Okay, Sheikh Ahmed's summary about the hadith al-munkar. We said hadith al-munkar, the ulama, they have different opinions regarding the definition of hadith al-munkar, but the two opinion of the ulama is the better according to the definition of hadith al-munkar. The first definition is هو الحديث الذي في إسناده راو فحش غلطه أو كثرت غفلته أو ظهر فسقه. The first definition is the hadith that we find a rawi, a narrator in the isnad. This narrator, he has the serious mistakes, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, or he's a passive. So if you find any narrator from the isnad who is passive, or he has serious mistakes, or he cannot distinguish between right and wrong, so this hadith is munkar. This hadith is munkar. The example of it is hadith that narrated from Nasa'i and Ibn Majah from Abu Zukair, Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais, and Hisham bin Urwa, and Abihi and Aisha قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل البلح بالتمر فإن ابن آدم إذا أكله غضب الشيطان. So this hadith is munkar. The Imam al-Nasa'i said it's munkar. Why he said it's munkar? Because Abu Zukair, Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais, indahu shiddatul ghafla. He cannot distinguish between right and wrong in the hadith. He cannot distinguish between the saying of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the saying of Sahaba. Maybe he can. The hadith is come from Sahabi, he said from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or maybe from Tabi'in, he said from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, but this person is a right person. This is the reason why these people ulama said for them, Adaraktuhum ghaflatus salihin. What is ghaflatus salihin? He's the righteous man, but because always he make his time in ibadah, he cannot read very well. So for this reason he make a lot of mistake in the hadith. Maybe the hadith is from Sahabi, he said from Prophet, or maybe from Tabi'i, he said from a Prophet. So this is the example of the first definition. The second definition that we said, if the rawi, we find in the isnad the rawi who is weak narrated the hadith against the other rawi who is siqah, so this hadith is also munkar. The example like hadith of Ubay bin Habib and Ishaq and Abi Ishaq and Aizara bin Hurais and Ibn Abbas. So this hadith is munkar. Why? Abu Hatim said this hadith is munkar. Why? Because Ubay bin Abi Habib is a weak. After he's a weak, this hadith he narrated it against other narrators that are siqah. Only him he narrated this hadith marfu'an عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. But the rest, the majority of the student of Abi Ishaq narrated this hadith from him and Aizara and Ibn Abbas mawqufan, not marfu'an. So now what is the difference, what is the relationship and difference between hadith al-munkar and shadh? It has relationship between shadh and munkar, and it has difference, similarity and differences between shadh and munkar. So you can understand from the definition of hadith al-shadh and hadith al-munkar, you can understand the similarities and the differences. The similarities is both hadith al-munkar and hadith shadh is mukhalafa, against, mukhalafa. Yes, because hadith shadh, the rawi who is sikah narrated the hadith against another rawi who is sikah, who is better than him in terms of memorization. You see, against. The hadith munkar is the rawi who is weak narrated hadith against the rawi who is sikah. So you see, both of them is mukhalafa. So this is the similarity, the relationship and similarity between hadith shadh and hadith al-munkar.
Again, the similarity
is mukhalafa. Both of them is mukhalafa. Shadh, sikah against another sikah who is better than him, or against the majority of sikat. This is shadh. But the munkar narrator is weak and against the narrator who is sikah. You see, both of them is mukhalafa, against. So this is the similarity, mukhalafa. So this is what Ibn Hajar said, because some ulama, they cannot differentiate between shadh and munkar. Some ulama, they said they are the same, but actually it's not the same. This is what Ibn Hajar said, it's not the same, because shadh, the rawi who against another rawi is sikah, but the munkar, the rawi who is against another rawi is weak. So this is the similarity, mukhalafa.
shadh is against the majority or against the rawi is
Is against the majority or against the rawi who is sick and better than him.
So
Yes.
shadh is a weak narrator.
No, munkar.
Sorry, munkar is a weak narrator.
Yes.
Against
Sikah.
sikah.
Yes. So you see, the similarity is against, mukhalafa. Both of shadh and munkar is mukhalafa. Then the difference between,
Only one similarity.
yes, only one similarity. The difference between shadh and munkar is the person in hadith shadh is sikah, is sikah. The narrator in hadith shadh is sikah, but he against another rawi who is better than him. But the rawi in hadith munkar is da'if, is da'if. So this is the differences. This is the differences. The rawi in hadith shadh is thiqah, but he's against another rawi who is better than him in terms of memorization. But the rawi in hadith al-munkar is weak, is weak. So this is the differences between shadh. Okay, you understand the similarity? Similarity is mukhalafa, against. So the difference is the narrator who narrated the hadith shadh is thiqah. Who narrated the hadith shadh is thiqah. But the narrator who narrated the hadith al-munkar is da'if. So this is different. Hadith shaz, the narrator is thiqa. Hadith munkar, the narrator is da'if. The narrator is da'if. So this is the similarity. This is the differences.
In memorization.
Yes. Okay. So this is the
Munkar is more serious.
yes. Munkar is da'ifun jiddan. The hukum of hadith munkar is da'ifun jiddan. It's da'if. Yeah. Shaz also is hadith da'if. But munkar is da'ifun jiddan. You know what is the meaning of jiddan?
Very, very extreme.
Ahmad, how I can say in Malay? Da'ifun jiddan.
Tersangat lemah.
So,
Tersangat lemah.
so this is the end of the hadith munkar. I try to summarize it for you, inshallah. Any soalan?
But now, people like Albani or Ahmad Shakir, everything, they just put ta'if or ta'if tikat. They do not specify the hadith munkar or shaz.
No, sometimes they said munkar. If you read the book of Albani, Silsila to the Ifa, yes, you can see, you can find many hadiths, he said munkar.
So when munkar means ta'if tikat.
Yeah, da'ifun jiddan. The hukum of hadith munkar is da'ifun jiddan. So we cannot apply it in our ibadah. We cannot apply it in our ibadah.
With hadith da'if jiddan, we can apply for ibadah.
Yes.
But for dua,
Even the dua is not ibadah. Dua is not ibadah. Yes, it's ibadah. So the right thing, some ulama there they said you can apply the hadith da'if in fada'ilul a'mal. This is, they said fada'ilul a'mal, but they give some conditions. So the people cannot fulfill that conditions. So if you look the conditions that the ulama said regarding for apply hadith da'if in fada'ilul a'mal, you cannot fulfill that condition. Firstly, if you do it, don't believe that this one is from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and don't say that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the one who say it, and don't call people to practice it. Just you do, and don't believe that Prophet do it. Okay.
For example, like now, I know some of the mosques or musalla, they always the imam.
Before you enter this, you ask me in the hadith.
Oh,
so
okay.
After we finish, so we can, yes.
Regarding Hubayb bin Habib.
Hubayb bin
Sorry. Zukair Yahya.
Abu Zukair, Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais.
He said that it is a saying of the Prophet.
Yes.
But it's actually a saying of the Sahaba.
Yes.
But at present day, if we say like that, it's wrong.
We cannot say that.
We cannot say
Yes.
It's
Even yes, we cannot say that it's from Prophet.
yeah. So what is the status for him? It's wrong.
It's wrong.
He is wrong.
Yes, it's wrong. Yes, he's wrong. So we cannot say this hadith is from Prophet.
Zukair also said it's from Prophet.
Yes, Zukair, he's the only one narrated this hadith.
Ubayd.
Ubayd in case he's weak.
No, Ubayd was the one who said.
Obviously, mixed up.
The first example is Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais, Abu Zukair. So this one, in the Shiddatul Ghafla, he cannot distinguish between the saying of the Prophet and the saying of the Sahaba and the saying of Tabi'in. So if he see any matter of the hadith, he said Qala Rasulullah. So maybe this hadith, I didn't know, maybe it's the saying of hukama. The hukama, or is the saying of tabi'in. Say he said, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You understand? Because he cannot differentiate between saying of the Prophet and the saying of the Sahaba and the saying of hukama. He cannot differentiate. He cannot distinguish. Hukama. You know hukama? No. You know what is the hukama? Religious?
The judge.
No, hukam. And the people that they have the wisdoms in yes. Maybe this is from the hukama that's saying that. Yes, so for this person, when he read, he said Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because he cannot distinguish between saying of the Prophet and the saying of the Sahaba and the saying of the rest people. Hukama. Yes.
What about a judge? Why also did the
Hukam. Hakim has a hukam. This is the Hakim one. Hukam is plural, many. Jama.
Why also did the same mistake, right?
No, Hubayb, also this Hubayb is weak. And he against many sikat. Because many sikat narrated this hadith from Ibn Abbas. Only from Ibn Abbas. Only from Ibn Abbas. But he said from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But the first one, Yahya bin Muhammad bin Qais, we didn't know, is it this saying is from Prophet, or is from Sahaba, or is from Hukama, or is from another ulama. We didn't know, because he cannot differentiate. Anything that he see, he said Qala Rasulullah. You understand? It's different with the second example, because second example, we already know that this call is from Abdullah bin Abbas, but this person is a weak. So he said from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the majority of the student of Abi Ishaq narrated this hadith from Ibn Abbas. So any soalan?
Last I think 2 weeks before,
Uh-huh.
you give an example of hadith. Tamizi narrated this hadith. He said it is Hasanul Sahih, but Albani said this hadith is Da'i. Which hadith was it?
I forgot. But because last 2 weeks I bring many hadiths. I cannot many hadiths. I cannot which hadith. Maybe if you can bring the audio I hear, maybe I can remember what I said.
In relation to my questions now, the earlier one, this Hubayb bin Habib, he is weak.
Yes, he's a weak. Yeah.
He's not sick.
He's not a siqah. So this is the reason why we said the hadith is munkar. If it's a siqah, but he against majority of the siqat, we call hadith shadh. But because he's a weak, Abu Hatim he said the hadith is munkar. Abu Hatim he said the hadith is munkar.
So munkar hadith can we use for ittiba?
Ittiba? No, we cannot use it at all. We cannot use it at all. In any hukum we cannot apply it.
But if we come across Hubayb in other hadith, does it mean that his memorization is weak at that time? Not necessarily, isn't it?
Yes.
He can be strong.
Yes. Sometimes maybe if you didn't find his mistake, we can accept. But the person is a righteous man, but he have the gafla. You know gafla. He cannot distinguish between two things.
That means we can, if we see his name, we cannot say that he's weak 100%.
No, we can say he's weak because in the hushiddatu gafla. Because the person who cannot distinguish between saying of the Prophet and the saying of the Sahaba, we cannot accept hadith from him.
That mistake or the weakness is only in one or two hadith. whereas the rest he remembered quite well.
If so, for this reason, if we get a shawahid wal mutaba'at, shawahid wal mutaba'at, now we get, he narrated the hadith, we already know him, this person, he cannot differentiate between saying of the Prophet and the saying of Sahaba. So if we find he narrated another hadith, we cannot accept that hadith until we get another person narrated the same thing. He said this is from Prophet, then we can accept his hadith, not for him, because of another person. So we call his hadith Hasan Ligairi, Hasan Ligairi, not Hasan Lizati, not Hasan Li Zati, lakin Hasan Ligairi. Yes. Okay. Ligairi, Hasan Lizati.
So munkar and shaz cannot use for itibar or shawahid at all.
At all. At all. Okay.
So what's the meaning of Ligairi and Izati?
Cannot be seen and seen.
Yeah, Hasan Lizatihi is the hadith I already explained before.
Okay.
Since 2 years ago, 2 years.
2 years ago.
Hasan Lizatihi is the hadith that the narrator who narrated it is Saduq. Is Saduq. Saduq means his memorization is not stronger if you compare it with the memorization of Thiqa. So this is called Hasan Lizati. If you find the hadith in the Isnad, the Rawi is Saduq, is not Thiqa, so this hadith is Hasan. The Saduq means this person have the memorization, but his memorization is not stronger if you compare it with the memorization of Thiqa. So this is called Hasan. But Hasan Ligairihi, actually the origin of the hadith is da'if. The origin of the hadith is da'if. But we get another hadith who shawahid wal mutaba'at. We get another hadith in another way that can support this hadith. So we said this hadith rise to Hasan, but not Lizatihi, bal Ligairihi. So this is the Hasan Ligairi. The same thing we have Sahihun Lizatihi, Sahihun Ligairi. I think you probably, yes, we already discussed that 2 years ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 years. Yes.
2 years. 2 years. No wonder again. I was one more so.
So your hadith we call her hadith. Okay.
Cannot accept the essay.
So Haji Nick, any soalan? So regarding the hadith, no any soalan?
No.
Okay, no more.
I mean, another one.
Okay.
Actually, is there differences between the modern muhaddis compared to the mutaqaddim in terms of shaz and munkar definition? Is there any differences or it's the same?
Yes, mutaqaddim always they use munkar even if the rawi is da'if. So this is the reason why we said we give two definitions. According to many mutaqaddimin, if they find any rawi in the isnad is da'if or is in the ghafla or is a fasiq, they call the hadith munkar. But mutaakhirin, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, is the one who said that the munkar, the right definition of munkar is the rawi da'if narrated hadith against. But in the mutaqaddim Ibn, he didn't against. If it's da'if, they call hadith munkar. So this is a difference of between mutaqaddimin and mutaakhirin regarding the hadith munkar and shaz. So alhamdulillah.
Does there are so many munkar hadith on this Syaban, on Syaban, right?
Yes. So if we finish the hadith, Sheikh Ahmad come close. So we start another
Session.
The session.
yes.